Finance Administration Committee and the Board of Directors. It's September 21st. It's about 11:35 in the morning at this time. So let us determine if we have a quorum. If you guys could administer the roll call, please.
Okay, can you administer the roll call?
Certainly. Thank you. So beginning with Director Gray.
I'm here.
Director Williams.
Here.
Director Deere.
Here.
Director Alvarez. And Chairman Houston.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Excellent. Okay, so public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak?
Not at this time. It appears we have no public comments at this time. However, Chair, if it would please the committee for me to just make a few short acknowledgements.
Okay, go ahead. Greg.
Very short. Just want to say happy Hispanic Heritage Month to our committee here, to the members who are here with us in the room, as well as to those who are on the platform with us, and to our district at large, in recognition of the vibrant communities that are a part of the Hispanic and Latinx communities. We celebrate with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move into our presentations, and I do understand we have a presentation. So Greg, if you'll go ahead and let us know about this item.
Absolutely, and I'd actually like to defer to our Manager of Finance, Marianne Rexrow, to introduce Chandler Asset Management and the presentation that they have for us today. So Marianne, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Houston, Director Williams. I'm happy to present to you Chandler Asset Management. They are here to make their annual presentation regarding the West Basin portfolio. And you'll see to my left is Mia Corral Brown. She is the Senior Relationship Manager for West Basin. And to her left is Elena Sampson, who is the Senior Strategic Portfolio Strategist. Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you. So whenever you ladies are ready, we do have the presentation up for you.
Great, thank you. If I may, I just want to say thank you for allowing us to be here this morning. Elena Sampson will be reviewing the economy as well as the portfolio through fiscal year end 6/30, and then she will also provide an update through August 31st, 2022. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elena so that she can begin her presentation.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. General Manager, I am having difficulty hearing. The volume is not up high enough.
Oh, okay. Is that something that we can correct?
Well, the volume in the room is, if you would elevate your voice when you speak, but I believe, Haza, can you confirm on your end if you can hear us remotely?
Yes, Julie, I can hear you, but it would be helpful if you did speak up just a bit. It's a little low on our end, although we can make it out.
Is it better if we use the podium?
The podium, that is a light. It's not a speaker, so the microphones are above your head. So if you could just,
Okay, so if we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, I want to start here. There's a lot of text on the page, but the highlights of what's here, we're all good with that. What we are looking at is, although it has continued to abate a bit here in August, the level continues to weigh on us. That is the headline bad news, excuse me, that we're all dealing with and grappling with. On the flip side, labor markets in the U.S. are strong and corporate earnings are coming in better than expected. So that's the good news in the economy. So together, the Federal Reserve has been focused on that bad news, inflation, #1 priority for them, and they've been aggressively hiking interest rates. Most recently today, we just heard about 30 minutes ago, an additional 75 basis point hike has taken place, bringing us up to 3.5% already. So very quickly increasing those rates. For our portfolio here at West Basin, that will also mean higher investment income going forward. So I wanted to just give you the highlights of what I'll be going over. So if we can go to page 2, please. So the Fed has two mandates. The first is employment, and maximum employment is what they are focused on. And so as I've stated, the labor market is still looking very healthy despite inflation, despite these rising interest rates, and this is underpinning consumer spending. Non-farm payrolls increased about 315,000 in August. That was a bit of a moderation. And national unemployment rate, that remains pretty low at 3.7%. But that's starting to demonstrate a gradual slowing in the economy. But frankly, the Fed isn't really focused on that at this point. As we turn to the next slide, number 3, the Fed, as I stated earlier, is laser focused on inflation, AKA price stability. That's what they've been looking at. CPI inflation moderated to 8.3%, down from 8.5% the prior month, and that is down from the 40-year high of 9.1% that we saw this summer. So very high levels of inflation. This was a bit of a surprise of the month-over-month increase from a core perspective, because we thought with the lower energy prices that we'd see more lowering of those CPI prices. However, with the personal consumption and expenditures, that's the Fed's preferred.
Screen a little. Sorry, a little more. That's it. I want to be able to see the clock.
Can you mute him, please? Thank you. Go ahead.
PCE, that's the preferred measure of inflation for the Fed. That is trending down a bit, but not sufficiently enough, which is reflected in that increase of 75 basis points that we saw today. If we move forward to slide number 4, please. So what does this mean holistically? Consumers, we represent 2/3 of GDP here in the US. We love to shop here in the US, right? But one of the most representative aspects of our expenditures is housing. And housing starts this week was released. That for the month of March increased about 12%, and that was actually, again, a surprise. We had seen some moderation happening after a lot of housing starts and a lot of housing purchases at the beginning of the year as consumers looked to purchase homes before mortgage rates increased. So where are we at with mortgage rates? We started the year at about 3% for mortgage rates. We are now above 6% for the 30-year fixed mortgage. So a very high increase for homeowners who are looking to close on housing. Today, we did see also existing home sales as a result fall month over month. That is the latest update that we've seen. And we're seeing that home builders are shifting from single family homes to multifamily homes to try to increase affordability for homeowners across the board. Here in California, I will comment that housing prices are up about 11% all month. And here in Los Angeles County, getting really granular, is an 8% increase. So we're looking at home prices here in LA County of about median home prices of about $855,000. So very high home prices here. Overall, you see on the Case Shillinger there, for the country, it's up 18%. So that is a very high levels of increase across the board. Now, if we continue forward to slide number 5, the Federal Reserve. What I want us to focus on here is just to put into context the level of increase that we've seen in terms of the federal fund rate. So if we compare 2015 to 2019, it took 5 years for the Federal Reserve to get up to 2.5%. The Federal Reserve has done that same level of increase in 6 months in 2022, and actually now has surpassed that now that we're at 3.5% as of today. So when I talk about the inverse relationship between bond prices and interest rates in a moment, think about how drastic that is of a change, and we're coming off of a 0% rate. That makes sense. Okay. And if anyone has any questions about why there's an inverse relationship, I'm happy to explain that. As we move forward to the bond yield slide, please. Next. So Treasury yield rate, what I want you to focus on that left-hand side, again, was that quick increase, the race to the top, if you will, of yield for both the 2, 5, and 10-year yields. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, what's important here is if you look at 2021, the bottom of the slide, notice that it took 30 years for you to get the 2% levels, right? And as soon as the Fed started to talk about these interest rates, the market reacted very quickly across the curve. And that's what you see in the middle of the page there. At the very top of the page, this is where you may hear on the news things like inverted yield curve. So anyone who can't see me, I'm doing air quotes. And so I want to talk about two things here. You'll hear the market often talk about the points that are 2-year to 10-year. Is that going up or is it going down? What you see here on the page as of the moment, it is going down for the 2 to 10-year points of the curve. It is inverted. And that is one of the signals that the market says is looking toward having a recession, not yet having it, but looking toward having. The 3-month point of the curve and the 10-year is what academics look at to determine whether there is an inversion, and that is not yet inverted. So another point of support that we are not yet in a recession, but are moving toward that point. The other point that I just want to reiterate here is that quick increase in yields. Again, bond prices go up, rates go down, and vice versa, right? So with that context, if we could move forward. Portfolio summary. So this is our portfolio summary as of 6:30, and we also, as Mia stated, have it as of August 31st. We have 2 accounts listed here. The 10808 account, which is the first one we have listed, is the overall operating reserve funds that are managed by Chandler. The second set of accounts that you will see listed is the standby account that we are managing as well. So in terms of what you see here on the page, I want to note a couple of things. The portfolio, we are focused at Chandler, and because of state code, on the safety and liquidity of the portfolio first and foremost, and then a commensurate rate of return for the 1 to 3 year benchmark. From there, we also want to note that the portfolio is in compliance with both state code as well as your investment policy. So for all the funds that we manage, we ensure that that is true. What you see here listed, it's a little hard to read here in the room. I don't know if folks have it in front of them, but what I want to point you to is a couple of things. What you can see is the modified duration is 1.5. What that means, it's a proxy for when the portfolio would mature as a whole, but it's also a level of projection on how much your portfolio will move in with 1% change in interest rates. So if the interest rates change by 1%, you should expect your portfolio to move by 1.5% in the opposite direction. That's a proxy there. And that's a little bit short compared to your benchmark as of 6:30. And that makes sense because there was a ton of volatility happening in the second quarter. And that gave us opportunity to be tactical. The other thing I want to comment on is that we've seen the average coupon and purchase yield start to increase as we've been reinvesting your portfolio, as you would expect, given all of these increases in rates. And as you look at your portfolio there in the middle, there has been a slight, it's hard to see, there has been overall a slight decrease in the portfolio over the course of the year. Again, please.
I was just going to point out, it is, Elena's on page 11 in your packet. If you're having a hard time seeing the screen.
This is what I've been describing here. This very drastic increase in yield was not able to be overcome as the bond prices went down. So if you think about it in your own pocketbook, if you were earning near 0% and the price of something went down by 5%, then there's not enough income to overcome that level of return. But the positive on that is that means we're getting further investment income moving forward. It builds a really strong foundation for the district portfolio moving forward. So what you also see here on the page in terms of credit quality, you see a large percentage of your portfolio is AA. This is rated as of S&P. S&P rates the U.S. government AA plus negative, and we have quite a bit of U.S. Treasuries in the portfolio. So want to help you understand why it's not all AAA in that particular page. And then down at the bottom, what you can see is that we have been outperforming the benchmark for most periods in 1 month, year to date, 1 year, and since inception. I do want to note that there was a bit of underperformance in the 3 month at the fiscal year end, but that was very understandable because we were focused on capturing some additional credit corporates during that time, which we saw the market credit spread. And what I mean by credit spread, in case anyone doesn't know what that term means, you were able to get a little bit more yield during that time from some of those corporates as the market had that volatility. So again, positive news for the district. So if we move to the next slide, please. You see here is, it's what Chandler anticipated, which is the market move outperforming across the board for the portfolio. So that level of volatility, the district. Now, I do want to state that I know a lot of those numbers are showing negative returns. It's important to note that these are unrealized losses. All of the bonds that you own in your portfolio, the district owns, and they mature at par, which means you will not realize the losses unless something is sold. And you have largely a buy and hold portfolio. So want to make sure that that is very clear. And overall, the other thing that we're very proud of is that although at Chandler, using a baseball analogy, we don't seek to hit it out of the park per se, but we do in a very consistent strategy will be strong for the district for the long-term performance, which is what you see here on the page with nearly 60 basis points outperformance. So if we turn further to the next slide, please. This is the standby portfolio. Largely, we're invested in two kinds of securities, the U.S. Treasuries and the U.S. agencies. This is expected to be closing soon, to my understanding. And at this point, if we can turn to the next slide, we solely have a U.S. agency in the portfolio that was purchased back in 2021, at which point, when the district needs the money, we're able to use it. Yes.
I just wanted to add to that. So when you see your monthly reports, both of these portfolios are shown as one. But as they handle both accounts, they're showing them separately. But maybe in the future, we will show them as one. So it'll be consistent with your monthly reports as well as their reporting.
Our back offices are currently working to consolidate this into one view for the next meeting.
So in terms of just what you'd see overall, in terms of transactions, things that we're excited about and giving you more specific numbers, we have a couple of different securities that we've recently locked in. We had a trade today that we were able to get for one of the super nationals in your account, which was at 4% yield. So very strong position there. Bank TD Ameritrade, we were able to lock in at 4.15%. So again, strong yields coming into the portfolio. And even U.S. Treasuries, we were able to get a 3-year at the end of the month of August for 3.5%. So some very good relative value across the board. And this is quite a big difference from where we were at the beginning of the year, where many things were less than 1%. So with that, I will stop and open for any questions, please.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and open it to my colleague and the other directors, so hopefully they can all hear us well. So are there any questions or comments on this?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. I like your energy.
Oh, thank you.
You're a very good presenter. I mean, you got the memo to always give a powerful presentation, and if this is, you're doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that compliment.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? We have two directors on the line. Director Gray or Director Deere, do you have questions, comments? Well, I'll just say, I guess in the big picture of our portfolio, you know, at the very basic level, how are we doing? Like if you just gave us the, 1-2 sentences, how are we looking with our assets?
Sentence, if I go back 2 slides, please, is that we're outperforming. We're outperforming the benchmark, which is how you measure your investment advisor. That's what we are looking to make sure that we're constantly outperforming on. And here you can see that we're outperforming, like I said, since inception by 60 basis points. And if you think about that on a $40 million portfolio, that is a substantial amount of money that we're outperforming.
Very good. Very good. Well, I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else we should know, Marianne, or?
No, but I do want to point out that, our first concern is safety. That's what we always look at to make sure that we don't lose any money.
Mhm.
That's number one. It's important to get a good yield, and that's why we use the benchmark to measure that. And that's what Chandler does for us. So we're very happy with them. This is, I think, your second presentation here.
It
We were
is,
here
yes.
once last year. We didn't have a full year. This year, we had a full year of results. We're very
In
pleased.
fact, last year we were here virtually. So it's really a pleasure to be here in person.
Yeah, I would agree. Totally agree. So I think with that, we don't really have any more questions. Thank you for the presentation. We do have our hard copies and it's in our packet. So if anything does come up, we can reach out. But, we really appreciate you coming personally to give us the in-person presentation. So thank you.
It's our pleasure.
So much.
So with that, we will move into our action calendar, which is item 5A.
Yes, and we have Julie Fraser Matthews, our Manager of Administration, who will help us with that particular item, approval of our minutes for the month.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon. Good morning to Chairman Houston, members of the board and committee. This is a routine item being brought before you today for the approval of the minutes. The minutes do provide the history and the action that is taken at our committee and our board meetings. The recommendation is to approve the August 3rd, 2022 special board meeting, also the August 17th special board meeting minutes, and the August 22nd, 2022 board meeting minutes. You will see in a few of them that there are expanded minutes. There was a request from a director to have their comments included at the special board meeting, and we've done so. So at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the 3 sets of minutes that are before you today.
Very good. Thank you, Julie. Any questions, Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Okay, or Directors Gray or Gear? Do you have any questions on the minutes?
And Chairman Houston, if I may, Director Deere, if you would like to speak, we have muted your phone on this end. If you'd like to speak or make a comment, if you could hit the *6 on your phone, it will unmute you.
I didn't realize they can't. Can we unmute them on our end?
We cannot. So once we mute them here,
Oh, there you are.
we cannot, but they can unmute themselves.
Can you hear us, Director Deere?
Give me a *6. Do you have me now?
Now we hear you. Yes, yes.
You can hear
Did
me.
you?
Okay, that's good. Although I've been in
Did
the
you?
same, glad you can hear me. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And so with that, I think we should move this to the board for full approval. With Director Williams
I concur.
concurs, okay, and I did note when I read this that you added the additional information that Director Alvarez requested, so. Very good, all right. Let's see. Next on the action calendar would be 5B, our fiscal year 2022-23 community outreach events. Apparently we have some events to consider, so let's.
Yes, and Julie will also provide the report and staff recommendations on these as well.
Thank you, Greg. Again, if you would turn to page packet 36, I'll begin the presentation on the community outreach. I do have 2 items before you today, and if it's the committee's pleasure to take them together or separately, just let me know.
Let's take them together.
Together? Okay. The first is the American Youth Soccer Organization's 22nd Annual Friendship Festival. This item is being brought for consideration from Director Deere, and he is asking that the board would consider a $2,500 sponsorship that would grant West Basin an opportunity to have a booth and a table. This year, we are asking for the amount of $2,500. Not last year, we didn't have this event last year. It was in 2019, 2020 when this last event was held. And we did have a speaking opportunity at that time. However, due to the organization trying to limit the exposure of COVID and the uptick, there will not be a speaking opportunity at this time. If there's no questions about that one, I'll go ahead and go into the second sponsorship for consideration.
Let me just mention this youth soccer thing. We sponsored that since before I've been on the board. It's been a very long-term relationship and very, I think it's very fruitful.
Okay, very good. And it looks like we're going to potentially have a booth at this event.
We will.
Right, we usually do.
Excellent. Okay. All right, very good. If you go on to the other one, Julie.
Thank you. The next item is the South Bay Workforce Investment Board's 27th Annual Award Ceremony. This item is being brought at the request of Director Gray for consideration to support their event that will be held on Thursday, November the 3rd. Director Gray would like to request the board to consider a $5,000 sponsorship that would grant an opportunity, an advertisement opportunity to promote West Basin. And including in that sponsorship, there are a number of items that we would get with a $5,000 sponsorship. It would include a platinum ceremony table for 10 to attend the event, 1 full-page program, journal, advertisement, the logo recognition on the back of their program journal, name recognition in the program journal. There would also be advertisement in the newsletter that they provide, our logo and verbal recognition during the event. And also the service logo and advertisement would be on their website for a year, which would link back to our website. So with those 2 items for your consideration, if the board or if the committee did approve and this goes to the board, there would be a remaining balance of $63,000 still in the community outreach budget. And I will read the recommendation at this time. And it is that the board approve the sponsorship requested by Director Deere for the American Youth Soccer Association 22nd Annual Friendship Festival event to be held on Saturday, October 15th, 2022 in the amount of $2,500. And number 2, the sponsorship requested by Director Gray for the South Bay Workforce Investment Board's 27th Annual Award Ceremony event to be held on Thursday, November the 3rd, 2022 in the amount of $5,000. At this time, I'll take any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Let's see, questions from, I see Director Williams. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. If you said it, it fell out. Is this going to be a in-person event?
Yes, it would be a table of 10
And where's it going to be again?
for the WIB.
Yeah.
The South Bay WIB one. That is a reception. It's going to be at the Torrance Marriott Hotel. And that's on Fashion Way in Torrance.
This sounds like one that they've done before, and we've been
We have
sponsors
done
of this.
We have done it in previous years. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, for the last couple of years, we have not had this event come to the board for their consideration. They've canceled it for the last 2 years.
Virus has been so politicized. What we do doesn't make sense. You know, I mean, one group, you can't get together and say anything in front of them. Then the next group, you can. So, I mean, it's kind of borders on a little ridiculous, but we'll go with the rules. So,
I agree with you, Director Williams, and
but I support this going forward.
okay, yeah, because, well, I'll just interrupt too. Well, I want to let Director Deere talk in a sec, but I know we supported them in the past, whether they were at this location or location. So it certainly is a history of that.
Yes, and this program, just so that the committee is aware, it is a youth-oriented program that assists the Inglewood and the Hawthorne teen centers that we have in the community, as well as their workforce success program. So it's a great program. I've attended personally one of the dinners myself, and to see the people that are involved in the program and hearing their stories about how this made a difference in their life, it's very moving to be a part of this.
And I don't need to look back at the record, but I think we've usually been at about this level in the past, consistently for years. So there's nothing changing here. I hear voices on the line. Is that Director Gray or Director Deere?
It's me. I'm sorry, I unmuted. I was trying to say I'd like to speak whenever it's appropriate.
It might be me, this hospital is unbelievably noisy.
I could not understand what Director Deere said, but I did understand what Director Gray said. So Director Gray, go ahead.
It might be this hospital I'm in, it's unbelievably noisy.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry to hear all that.
Get out of there.
Okay, Director Gray, you have the floor.
Right, thank you. If we're speaking regarding the request of sponsorship for South, the South Bay Web, I believe, is the organization. We have sponsored it before. In fact, they've recognized West Basin. I think at one point I was the president of the board, and so I was recognized on behalf of West Basin. We have sponsored the event for several years, and we not only sponsored this event, but we sponsored some of their programs in terms of what they do for the youth, and certainly it covers our service area, not only Inglewood, but Hawthorne too. So, and they're well known in the community, so I think it makes sense to continue to support the organization. So I would hope that the board will move forward with it. So thank you. And thank you, Julie, for bringing all the intel, the information to the board. Thank you.
Great. And Director Deere, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'm really sorry, but it's sometimes hard to hear you both. So we're just trying to make sure we get everybody in real quick. So I think with that, you know, again, we've had a long history. As a matter of fact, Jan Vogel's been is well regarded in our region for years. And so I'm very happy we would consider doing this again. And if the board ends up approving it, of course, I think that we should do our best to have some presence at the event. But with that, I would move that, well, I don't need to move. We're just recommending that this goes forward to the board for approval with a yes. And
I concur.
Director Williams concurs. So that is that. And then we have another item, 5C, which is a district sponsorship request. So let's go ahead with that one, please.
May.
Okay. So if you would look at page 46 in your agenda packet, that's where this item will begin. This is a district sponsorship request. As you recall, at the July 26th meeting of 2021, the board approved district sponsorship, the budget, under the condition that each district-wide sponsorship would be brought back to the full board for their consideration. So today I'm bringing the 2022 Aqua Fall Conference and exhibition. This is a sponsorship that we received that will be held on Tuesday, November the 29th through December 1st, 2022. In the fiscal year of 2021 or 2020 and 2021, we sponsored this event in the amount of $7,500. You'll see the tiers of the sponsorships that are outlined below. And the funds have been approved in our sponsorship budget in the amount of $55,000 for this. But I do want to highlight some of the benefits of the Aqua membership. It is one of the largest coalitions of water agencies in California, and their network is a great reach. It provides a lot of knowledge and connections. It also presents a united voice on policy and legislation, as well as their programs that help keep West Basin District as a whole informed. And not to mention that they're also phenomenal for our competitive employee benefits. So with that, I'd like to offer a recommendation that the board would consider sponsoring the 2022 Aqua Fall Conference and exhibition to be held on Tuesday, November the 29th, 2022 through Tuesday, December the 1st, 2022, in the amount of $6,500. And if you would like to see the specific benefits that the district would receive at the gold $6,500 level, you can find that on packet page 53, where it gives a list of the items that we would benefit from sponsoring at this level. So at this time, I would be happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, quick question from me is, where are they holding this conference?
This one, let me look here real quick. I just signed up.
Is this the one in Indian Wells?
This one's in Indian Wells.
So it's gonna be in Southern California,
Yes.
this type, okay. I know, I think I'm planning to go ahead of time anyways, but The only thing I see here, the difference from 30,000 to 6,500 mostly is the number of complimentary tickets that are included, I believe. Correct?
You would get 2 complimentary tickets, and then you have a higher level of exposure of our logo.
Mhm.
And then keep in mind that the sponsorship that if we do go with this one, the conferences that you get with this package, it doesn't necessarily go towards this conference. It would go towards the next conference that's coming up in the spring or the fall. So we have utilized the sponsorship packet at the $7,500 level. I know Director Houston, Director Williams, the complimentary registrations, each of you have had the opportunity to use those when we've had them in the past. So the sponsorship that would be before you today, if the board would consider moving forward with this, would be 2 for an upcoming or 1 in the future.
Right. Thank you.
And also just the cost, I know that this sometimes comes up, the cost of an individual ticket just to register is $775.
$775.
$775.
I never go on my own.
Okay, so, and I'll open it to the floor in 1 second. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm supportive of this level, in particular because we usually have multiple people from West Basin going, whether it's board members and others, to these. So it makes a lot of sense usually to have it built in to the sponsorship price versus individual tickets, which we can add more, So I'm fully supportive of this recommendation for the board. But I'll open it to Director Williams and then the other 2 colleagues. So Director Williams?
I'm good. Thank you.
And Director Deere or Director Gray, any questions or thoughts on this?
No, no question, just comment. I think we should support at the level recommended. I am on the Aqua Board representing West Basin, and I think Director Houston is heading up or on one of our subcommittees for Aqua, so I certainly support the recommendation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Director Deere?
Yes?
Yes, sir. Did you have any questions or comments on this or?
No? I've gone to the conference before. It's a good one.
Okay. So I think you heard from us that we both recommend to move this to the board with approval of this price point. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that, if you all would make sure when we're looking at the conference and, it's not just board members attending, of course, if it's key staff, et cetera, you all need to make that call. We have budget for staff to attend certain things, so please look at that. If there's reason for folks to go out there, especially since it's close, it's driving distance. I would just ask that, assuming this gets approved at the board level, staff would look at that. Okay, yes?
And if I can also add that if the board would approve this item, it would leave a remaining balance in the district-wide sponsorship budget of $38,250.
One last question on this. This is one that came directly to the district, as they do. This doesn't come through one director or another.
That's correct. That's why it's on the district sponsorship budget.
Perfect. Okay, because there seems to be some confusion about how these things happen, and I know I'm very clear on how they come in. So there's certain ones that come straight to the district that go to the full board for discussion rather than these are not sponsorships through director divisions.
That is correct. That is referenced at the beginning of the staff report where I mentioned that the board back in July of 2021 asked any district-wide sponsorship, if it would come into the district, that the full board would weigh in if they would want to participate.
Exactly. Okay. So we've got that one taken care of. Let's go on. Let's see. We are at 5D, as in dog, request to waive interest rate requirement under the Small and Community Bank Investment Program.
So we'll have our manager of finance again, Mary Ann Rexroad, present on this particular item.
Great.
Great.
Good morning again. Just want to point you out on page 58 of your packet.
Page what?
Page 58.
58. Okay.
As you mentioned, item 5D.
Can you probably speak up just a little for them?
Of course.
Yeah.
This is item 5D, request to waive interest rate requirement under the Small and Community Bank Investment Program.
Excuse me, Marion, can I ask you maybe to move underneath the microphone? I think because you're right in between them, it might come up across a little bit louder through there. Thank you.
All right, hopefully you can hear me better.
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, good, great.
Especially for those at home or wherever. Yeah.
Where West Basin has a small community bank investment program, and the policy does allow for the district to invest in our local small community banks, but there are certain requirements that they have to meet. Requirements is that they meet the interest rate, and currently that is, the requirement states, and I'll read the policy, that the investment must enjoy a rate of return no lower than the federal funds rate plus 10 basis points. Currently, we have two banks that are in the program. They're not able to meet this requirement. We did speak to them and we did have discussions. And one of the things that they pointed out is there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now, as you heard just from Chandler Asset Management shortly ago. There's been a steep rise in those rates, and it's very hard for these banks to keep up with that, especially the smaller ones. As a point of reference, back in March, I believe the Fed fund rate was like 25 basis points, and we heard today it's over 3% or 300. Very steep rise. So because of that, staff is recommending that the board consider waiving the interest rate requirement for both City First, Broadway Federal Bank, and Manufacturers Bank, and direct the deputy treasurer to negotiate terms. I just want to point out too that the City First, Broadway Federal has been in the program since 1999, so they've been around. In fact, they were one of our first, they were the first participating bank. And then Manufacturers Bank, which is the other bank that was not able to meet this requirement, has been in the program since 2008.
Hello, sir.
With that, I'd like to read the recommendation, then I can open up for any questions.
Go ahead.
Recommendation is that the Board of Directors waive the interest rate requirement for City First, Broadway Federal Bank, and Manufacturers Bank, and direct the Deputy Treasurer to negotiate reasonable terms and report back at the next Finance and Administrative Committee meeting.
Okay, very good. Any questions? I'll start with Director Williams.
Well, thank you.
Any questions from the other two directors, Gray or Deere?
No, thank you.
If I could add, this, as you're aware, we've been talking about the policy for a while now, and we do plan to bring back some recommendations to adjust this policy next month.
Good. Let me ask, how much is it we usually have that we work with these two banks?
Federal, the amount is right now it's $750,000 that we had in what was called the CDARS program, and then the $250,000 within the bank itself in their CD program.
Okay.
With the manufacturers, it's smaller. It's a $250,000 investment.
And when we make an exception like this, I mean, on our side, it's not impacting us greatly or tremendously to do an exception like this.
I can comment on that. I will say that, it goes back to the purpose of this program. And I think that we want to diversify some of our investment portfolio into these small and community bank programs. And so over the years, we have tried to identify what are the issues and not necessarily change policy to adhere to that, but make sure that they are meaningful and impactful to get to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish. So to that end, we do have, some requirements about what to do to participate in the program, how much we would participate in the program, which is up to $10 million. And we're not currently there now, and we have more information, like I said, we'll be bringing back in October. So for us on the interest rate side, which is a component here, we do feel that it's not the reason why we're in this program is to earn the rate. It is about, making sure that investments and other, cash management, we've heard them and how they engage into the community and all that. So we feel that the interest rate is something that we are comfortable in sort of letting it be something different. It has allowed us to get in some cases, them to raise their rates up to get to us. But we did have conversations with some of our participants just to find out what we're at. And even though the rates are increasing, the banks are not raising at the same sort of trajectory, if you will. And as a result, we're going to find ourselves in more positions where it's there. So just a kind of tease for next month, what we do anticipate sort of recommending that we might remove this requirement, that we would still look at making sure that we get the best rate that's out there. Because again, we have another portfolio that is really going to serve us to be able to do that. And it still gets to the heart of what the purpose of this program is which is to get funds out into our community so that it can get loans out to other things or participate with them in other ways. So again, we can have that conversation about the interest rate requirements, removal or no removal next month. But it is one of those things where we do feel comfortable it's there because we felt that what we had before, which was a late requirement, oh, you must be within 10 basis points of late. Well, then that didn't work because it was lagging. So we're like, okay, Fed funds rate, it's low, it's there. And now we feel like we're just chasing the market to try to get to it. And it doesn't seem like it's getting to the heart of it. And the end result is that if it's the 3% or if it's the 1% or whatever the case is, the amount of investment that's there is not significant enough for the district to, I would say, fall on its sword to say we must get that interest rate requirement. If again, the purpose and the reason why we have this program is to diversify into our community.
I think that was very well said, actually. Yeah.
That's why we have you here.
Yes. Yes. So the good thing is this actually tees up thoughts and ideas for next month.
We see it as that opportunity that's there. And again, Marianne has reached out to other banks within our service area. And we do have some information that we hope to present to you next week to try to further expand this program because we are just at 4 participants currently. And we have growth in that program to be able to do so.
Well, I'll just say, because number one, we all know banking is a tough business and they keep consolidating. And spread some of the assets of the district around. And like you just said, we keep having to change things where it's like we're chasing something here and then, it adjusts things and then we're rethinking it. So it probably is a good idea that we're taking some of the barriers off that just allow us to look, at the end of the day, if the bank's not going to fail, if there's certain things that are in place that we know we have security with funds in that bank, that would probably be, part of the bar that just has to be set, right? And maybe not some of these other, requirements we've been put on to ourselves, if you will. If we know we have a secure investment, and if something happened, we would be okay, then that's probably the best scenario we can ask for. But more importantly, community banks are that's important.
Right,
And they're
the
struggling.
community banks are changing too. I mean, as you mentioned, some of the participants that we had in the past, Bank of Manhattan, for instance, was acquired by Premier Pacific. So they're no longer a definition of a small. And so could we then say, are they still community? So again, we understand and we're trying to understand where it is. We even had a conversation with Chandler to say, hey, what do you see? And it's hard. Today, if we were to do that, they don't move at the same pace that the Fed does. The market on the corporate side, or the treasuries could certainly move, but certainly not at the local bank. And there are a number of considerations. Part of it is, what is the Fed funds rate, but part of it is what is your relationship with them. Part of it is we've been with Broadway Federal for a long time, since 1999. They're willing to work with us, but there's also restrictions that they have within their own sort of management. And so they go to toe with us as far as they can. And then that's, when we found out, they just can't go where we need them to be. And so we've had this situation in the past. I think a couple of years ago, we tried to come back with you to say, hey, they don't meet the interest rate requirement. And so we wanted to, again, bring this to you. And again, like I said, tease it up for next month.
Okay, well, Let me see, this is an action item. So I support the recommendation, should go to the board with a position of yes. I think Director Williams, you concur?
Concur.
Yes, all right. So thank you very much. And I do look forward to that presentation next month so we can have a broader dialogue about our program. Okay, so let's move on to item E,
Okay, well,
which is about hybrid teleworking policy.
yes, so this is a continuation of our last presentation here in the Finance and Administration Committee, discussing the direction that we were recommending, which is to implement a permanent telework policy, moving away from the current emergency order that we're under. And so we are now bringing forward the admin policy changes. And so Michelle Green, Manager of Human Resources, is here to provide the presentation and the recommended code changes. So Michelle, please.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, Chair Houston and directors and members of the board. As Greg indicated at the last Finance and Administration Committee meeting on August 17th, staff presented the board with an update on our proposal for a permanent hybrid teleworking policy. This starts on packet page 60, by the way. To include and so essentially that policy that was presented included information relevant to the policy formation. And we also provided information regarding a survey of peer water districts and public agencies. So now staff has prepared a hybrid teleworking policy, which is included in attachment A for board's consideration. Just to give a little background though, again, about why we got here is since the start of the pandemic in March of 2020, West Basin staff has been in an emergency teleworking status. And in July of 2021, staff transitioned to a hybrid schedule approach. And currently all staff are work a minimum of 2 days per week in the office and 3 days from home when they are not observing their regular 980 off Friday. So to give you some information specific to the formation of the policy that we're recommending, if you turn to packet page 77, there's a PowerPoint presentation where I'll give you some background and specifics about or summarizing the policy standards. But just again, to give some background about why we even got here and to give you a COVID-19 update, because as you may recall, this all started, we had a standing item on the F&A committee where we provided information to the board regarding our COVID-19 update. And so again, just to further, the County of Los Angeles Public Health Department has still not changed its protocols in terms of masking indoors. And as of the data through September 14th of 2022, Los Angeles County's COVID metrics notes that 1,862 new cases had been reported. That includes cases reported via Long Beach and Pasadena Health Departments. And the testing positivity rate on a 7-day daily average is at 5.83%. And currently, as of September 14th, there were 677 hospitalizations. So West Basin continues to follow the Public Health Department's best practice to prevent COVID-19. And those include actively encouraging staff to stay home if they are sick and to report any positive cases or exposure to COVID-19. Provide specific return to work requirements and guidelines to those employees who have tested positive or who have been exposed. And within the last month, we've had 2 employees who had tested positive. And whenever possible, to take steps to reduce crowding indoors and encouraging physical distancing as needed, and then providing staff with all necessary sanitizing and cleaning and disinfection supplies, which we continue to do. And of course, staff who prefer to wear masks are totally encouraged to continue doing so. And we continue to supply staff with appropriate face masks if needed. And as always, should there be a rise in COVID-19 cases to cause the County Public Health Department or other critical authorities to revise masking or other COVID safety directives, the district will continue to abide by all requirements as necessary. And I'm sure as you've all heard, President Biden recently indicated that there is a that has declared that the pandemic is over, but there are many others who are challenging that opinion. To summarize for you the key terms of the policy on packet page 79, one, employees must complete and submit a hybrid teleworking agreement form to their department manager for consideration and approval. And the employee's department manager will provide the completed form to the Human Resources Department. And of course, final approval is by the general manager. Teleworking, as proposed in the policy terms, is limited to no more than 2 days per week for an employee on a 5-day work week, that's Monday through Friday, and no more than 1 day on a 4-day work week, Monday through Thursday. So each department must be staffed during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, either in-house or remotely. Teleworking is voluntary and subject to meeting eligibility requirements. And just so you have some idea of what those eligibility requirements are, it's limited to full-time employees at the discretion, of course, of the department manager based on operational needs. Teleworking should not impede other employees or work groups from performing their job duties or impact the district's business needs or diminish the operations of the district. Teleworking does not reduce service to internal or external customers. The individuals who are eligible must have the ability to work independently. They also must have the ability to perform their job duties from a location separate from the district office, for example, and we refer to that or define that as the alternative work site, without diminishing the quantity or quality of the work that they perform. And their job duties and requirements allow the employee to be away from the district's work site for a period of time during the work week. And the job can be done remotely without disruption to the flow of work and communication. So the employee must be available by virtual meeting, phone call, email, and shared servers that can be accessed remotely. Going back to the PowerPoint, teleworking is also not permanent and may be discontinued at any time by the district without prior notice. Teleworking is a privilege extended to positions where it will not impede the employee's ability to perform their job duties. Another key policy term is that the decision to terminate teleworking is not subject to any grievance or appeal process. And the department manager may determine that some positions and/or individuals are not well suited for the teleworking option. Going to packet page 89. All existing fees, obligations, responsibilities, and conditions of employment remain unchanged during the teleworking terms. The employee must meet the same standards of performance and professionalism expected in terms of job responsibilities, the work product, and timeliness of assignments. And the district will not reimburse or pay directly for home internet charges. And as I reported at the last Finance and Administration Committee, there's no obligation to reimburse for California Labor Code. And we continue to provide basic office supplies by the district to those employees who are working remotely. And all equipment that the district provides is district property, and all staff are aware of that. And the district retains control over the property and reserves the right to monitor district property even when used at the employee's alternative work site. And that would be the case as well when employees are working in the office. And per packet, page 89. I'm sorry.
Maybe 80.
I was going to packet page.
Page 81.
Page 81. Sorry. So the alternatives for board's consideration is to either continue the current emergency teleworking policy, require that all staff return to the office full-time, or implement a permanent hybrid teleworking policy, and that would be the general manager's recommendation at this time. However, I do want to turn back to board report, which I'm going to page 61. And to remind the board that in the last presentation that was given on August 17th, we also presented information regarding a survey of comparable agencies and water districts to solicit information regarding whether or not they were considering entering into a permanent hybrid work schedule policy. And that updated survey is on packet page 69. So just to summarize that for you, it's a little small, so I know that you may not be able to read it. And again, this is on packet page 69. This is the survey results. We conducted that survey in May of 2022, but after the last Finance and Administration Committee meeting in August, we did go back to those agencies who did not supply a response, because we had several agencies who did not supply a response. And so those agencies are noted in green on the survey results. Those are the agencies who responded after we reached out to them yet again after the last Finance and Administration Committee meeting. And so essentially, just to summarize this as a whole, of the 18 agencies that we surveyed, 10 agencies either have already implemented a permanent hybrid policy or they're in the process of doing so. 7 of those 10 agencies are requiring staff to be in the office 3 days or more. 2 of the agencies are requiring staff to be in the office 2 days. But one of those agencies is a 4-10 or observing a 4-10 work schedule. And then there's one agency who has not necessarily noted the exact amount of days. And that's primarily because that particular agency has limited office space. And so they have not set aside a specific amount of days. Of those surveys, there are 6 agencies that said they have no intention on implementing a hybrid policy or work schedule. 1 agency remains undecided at this time. And then we only had 1 agency that did not respond to the survey, even after we reached out a second time.
Okay.
So again, as noted, the alternatives for board consideration is to continue under the current emergency teleworking policy, require staff to return full time, or implement a permanent hybrid teleworking policy. And as noted earlier, the general manager recommends option 3 for board consideration. And again, just to emphasize what some of those benefits to a hybrid teleworking policy are, research shows that a hybrid work approach can improve employee productivity, meet employee needs for flexibility, reduce staff turnover. I spoke to that significantly in our last Finance and Administration Committee, and potentially encourage a more diverse workforce. And further, West Basin's proposal of a permanent hybrid teleworking policy demonstrates sound efforts by management to address changes in working conditions, particularly in addressing the effects of a post-pandemic work environment on staff and West Basin operations. And if does the board have any questions at this time before I read the recommendation?
Why don't we do this before you do the recommendation? Because really you're kind of putting in our wheelhouse. I know the general manager has a recommendation, right? So why don't we do this? Because it does say here, we're looking at some alternatives for our consideration, but it does say the general manager's recommendation is a permanent hybrid teleworking. So if the general manager could opine for a moment on your recommendation.
Absolutely.
That would be great.
Absolutely, Director. And I think in the last presentation at the FNA and also in the follow-up to the full board, we talked about the benefits to the district and the benefits to the employee. And so the benefits to the district includes, higher morale among the workforce, to have the opportunity to attract the best talent, because we'll be able to speak to the certainty of our teleworking policy. We've actually had a candidate or 2 decline an offer because we were not able to make a commitment as to teleworking. But in addition to that, coming from a 2-day in the office approach increasing it by one additional day, a third day in the office, provides more face time, more communication, more of the coaching and mentoring, and building the culture that West Basin has come to love and appreciate over many years before I'd gotten here, and that I've come to understand. And from the employee's perspective, having some permanency to the policy gives the employee certainty as to what flexibility they will have going into the future without the concern of this temporary condition being removed at some point down the road. Having, that, I think we indicated that some employees feel this to be as important, if not more important than, say, the actual pay increase itself. So I think given those considerations, I very much look forward to having staff more present in the office, specifically for that face time and that camaraderie and that communication, and to be able to build the team culture that I really want to count upon as we look to transform our district going forward in all the work that we're setting out to do.
Very good, thank you. Let's go ahead and.
Let me add that it's not about productivity. I think there is a question as to whether if productivity is high, then why should we change? I would articulate that being in the office is not a punishment. Being in the office is a benefit for us to work together and to have camaraderie with one another and to build the kind of relationships and the working relationships that exemplify us being able to count on one another, building the trust and building the speed of delivery of services on behalf of our community. And while productivity may go up and go down, those have to be dealt with from a management perspective in any case, wherever an employee may be working. And so if they're underperforming in the office or they're underperforming at home, we as managers have to manage to performance. And so being in the building should not be viewed as a punishment. I think it should be celebrated. That's all. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to open it to the floor because this is for us to discuss, as it goes to the board. Director Williams, did you have? Well, I'll go with Director Gray first. I hear Director Gray.
Oh, okay. I can wait for Director Williams if he's the. Would you like me to wait for him?
Yes. No, just kidding.
All right, Harold. All right, Director Williams.
Oh, just kidding. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
made me forget my questions, but I heard the general manager mention it's not a punishment. I hope that staff is not viewing this as a punishment to be in the office, but I do get his point. And I may have asked this before, and maybe Ms. Green covered it, but was there a survey of the employees that referenced what their preference or what how they felt about it? Not that the final decision, of course, is the board's decision, but it's always good to know how staff feels about doing anything differently. And then the other question is the word was permanent. Telecommuting, I mean, how does that impact any other future discussion about whether or not how often staff would be in the office? Because even though the pandemic is over, we're still faced with some challenges as it relates to potential not being able to be in the public as often, or even some other health issues restrictions in terms of masks and so forth. So the word permanent is always something that we should consider when we look at that. I think what we've been doing has been working, but I think I've heard the general manager speak of he needs another day that staff needs to be there, and I respect that, but I would like to know how staff feels, because we do have a very dedicated staff that I think works very hard. And as I've said before, the work, I think it continues to be excellent work on behalf of the staff and the general manager. So I don't see any impact in reducing the quality or the level of quality of the work and the level of commitment of staff. So those are some of the questions. I know Michelle gave some input on some of the other agencies. I don't remember if you spoke to whether or not there were permanent telecommuting schedule or not, and maybe you did, but those are just some of the issues for me moving forward. First, we've been able to function, I think, very, very well. But if the general manager feels there's a need for more face time, I think he used, then that's important to make sure we do support that, but as well as ensuring that the staff, how they feel about whatever changes that are being made, I think it's always important to me, and I think all of us. So those are my questions and comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray. In speaking specifically to whether or not staff were surveyed specifically about whether or not they wanted a hybrid, we did not do a specific survey in that regard. However, the district did do a survey of staff on building, the DOD building relocation. And in that survey, the issue of a hybrid came up. And overwhelmingly, there was a number of staff who indicated that if the building were to be relocated to another location, specifically one that is further away from the district's location as it is here in Carson, that overwhelmingly staff would prefer a hybrid approach because of the fact that moving further away, particularly if they already live far from the district, they would prefer a hybrid approach. We did not ask staff those specific to how many days they would prefer to be in the office versus not. I am pretty certain that if we did such a survey, that most staff would want to come in as we currently are, 2 days in the office versus 3. But we have not, to answer your question, we have not done a survey specifically asking that question, how many days you would prefer. Again, as I indicated from the survey findings, it shows that the overwhelmingly the agencies that are doing hybrids at this point are coming into the office or requiring staff to come in the office 3 days a week. There was one agency that required staff to come in 4 days and 1 day remote. And some agencies have indicated they will, and those agencies that said 1 to 2 days, they may be considering more. But again, when I spoke to a lot of my colleagues at other agencies, this is still, overwhelmingly, something that they all will be looking at over time. And in terms of this being a permanent hybrid, as I stated in the report today, it does also give an indication that the general manager has the authority or the ability to remove the hybrid policy at any time without notice. And again, that all depends on where, the world stands with, whether the pandemic is going to come back or, whether or not essentially things would change from a health and safety standpoint. And so while we indicate that there's a permanency to this, there still is that catalyst within the policy that states that the general manager has the authority to remove the policy at any time. And so I found that in reviewing a lot of the other agencies' policies, they too had language similar to that, indicating that it can be changed or removed or terminated at any time.
Okay, Chair, can I ask one question based on what Ms. Green said? Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned the survey said that most agencies were doing a hybrid. Are you speaking of a permanent telecommuting hybrid model? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So the specific question, when we sent the survey out to all of the agencies, has your agency implemented or has plans to implement a permanent hybrid work schedule? And so that was the specific question posed to those agencies. And as I indicated, there are about 10 agencies that said yes, they have either implemented said policy or are in the process of doing so.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Director Williams.
Thank you very much. I agree with the general manager, and especially when he indicated that the bottom line is not always the best line. if you know what I'm talking about.
Okay,
That is, we have been raised to believe that it's the bottom line. And the bottom line, it relates to cash, money, right? And that's not always the best line. You have to consider other things other than the bottom line. So I like your approach.
thank you. Thank you for that support.
Very good. Is Director Deere still on the line?
Is, but he's muted. Director Deere, if you'd like to speak, if you could hit *6. Director Deere, are you with us?
Wondering why is everyone looking up there? The conversation's happening down here.
Means or it's still.
He's unmuted now.
Hey, Director Deere, can you hear us? Well, let me
*6, right?
let me ask a question.
Sounds like he's coming back.
Is he coming back?
He is. He's unmuted now. Director Deere, can you hear us?
Yes,
I'm going to move on. So I have a question for Michelle. Do we still have the 980 schedule?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so that is also built into this scenario.
Yes.
So, I had one other question, and even with the current scenario, let alone what we're looking at, it seems to me, but I don't know, that's why I'm asking, is that things have worked well with our staff when it comes to the current hybrid work model, right?
Yes.
As a whole.
Yes.
hello?
Dr. Deere, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any questions or comments?
*6.
Okay, so
Hear
we
me?
gotta keep this. Yeah, we hear you. We hear you. Go ahead.
We can hear you, Director Deere. Go ahead if you'd like to make comments.
Oh, God damn it.
All right, well, I'm just gonna keep talking. So in the meantime, let me just say this. We've seen a lot of discussion in the private sector with this. People are coming back to the office. They're trying to figure out the right model. I do think it's a huge benefit to our employees to have the option of a hybrid work schedule. I think as a public agency, as you all know, we only have so many tools to incentivize and retain employees and, try our best to accommodate them. Certainly, I believe we have very good benefits and other things, but, there are a lot of private sector players right now that they've got wonderful enticements and they're pulling people away from looking at the public sector. So first and foremost, I applaud the efforts of the agency to look at, a hybrid model permanently going forward. And I think we need to be there. Second, I want to say thank you, Michelle, for surveying these agencies and also seeing that the majority of them are in the space we are looking at. I do see the ones that, in my opinion, that are saying you got to be in the office 5 days a week. I think that's short-sighted. I think that's kind of unfortunate for those agencies personally. But I don't work for those agencies.
Right.
I am in a position to work with us, and I do see most of our Los Angeles County agencies are being very forward-thinking. So as far as I'm concerned, I personally do support a 3-day work week in the office. I just think that that's, to me, the most ideal number, because what I'd like to see is, there's those days when we can pretty much count on everybody will physically be here so that we have that camaraderie. We have the opportunity to interact. And I read a lot myself and the studies too. And one of the things I also understand is for the folks who are not coming in the office anymore, they're really missing out on career growth and development. And some of the younger employees, whether they realize that or not, they're not getting the same exposure that they would have had in the old days, right, before pandemic. So I do support the 3 days. I read through the adjustments to the admin code, which obviously this was worked with legal counsel, right? To make sure everything is
Yes,
accurate.
and I forgot to mention that part. Legal counsel did review the policy as well.
Okay. Look, I understand people have different thoughts and ideas, but I personally think this is a tremendous benefit. I mean, we've learned a lot in the pandemic. I'm happy that the agency would say, you know what, we're not going to go back to what it was. We're changing and adjusting with the times. And you're seeing that a number of other public agencies are trying to figure this out too. And again, I'm the ones that don't do it, I think they're missing the boat. People are going to kind of want to look at working at West Basin rather than working at some of these other agencies because they're not offering this. So anyway, all that being said, I support what is before us, the recommendation. I think it should go to the full board. I hope the board as a whole will support it. So that's my take on it. Director Williams, any other thoughts as a member of the committee?
Well, the only thought I'd have is that because this is such a very important issue that we're dealing with and will have ramifications for a long time, that we should send this to the board without a recommendation so that we can have this full discussion at the board, because we only hear part of what Director Deere is saying. And then we know that we have a board member who's very opinionated, that he should get his full shot at this as well. And then we'll have it going forward with no recommendation, but here it is. Let's do it. And there'll be no reason for not making a good, strong decision at the board meeting.
Very good. So with that, I will concur with you that we'll send this to the board without a recommendation from the committee, although I think you have seen some of the fresh opinions as it is. But I certainly would want to make sure all of our colleagues, they will get the chance to talk about this and we can vote on it. And I would like to hopefully have this wrapped up, yes, by the end of this month, because it gives certainty to the agency and certainty to employees. And I just think it's a huge step for us to look at this. So thank you to everybody, all the work involved. And by the way, in all of this, at the end of the day, we're never going to make everybody happy. We get that. We are going to, but and we've got to have the point where, okay, here's where we're at. This is the rules of the road. But I think that 3 days a week is really good, quite frankly, let alone when we look at a new space potentially, even if you rehab this building, if you look at what would be the design and function of a new facility for staff, all this will be incorporated into that. Is, staggered work schedules, how much space do we need? How's the layout, et cetera. So anyway, we can get this definitive decision done this month, and then that'll help, I hope, drive the conversation with the future of our office space. So I think we definitely have vetted this pretty well, and I appreciate my colleagues who were able to weigh in. So let's move it to the board without a recommendation, and hopefully we can take our action at our full board meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think, are in the tail end of this.
Thank you, Michelle,
Thank you, Michelle.
for everything you've done to put this together.
Team.
So that takes us to our information calendar, Chair Houston.
Correct. Information calendar, item 6.
Okay, so that brings us to our monthly financial report, and we have Mary Ann to continue with that presentation.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, I am on page 83 of your package. The monthly financial report, just want to point out this is required, staff is required to submit these various reports to you each month, including monthly demands, the cash investments, water sale payments, and then the conference and travel expense report, and the executive management staff.
Can you talk up just a little, Mary? Thank you.
Sorry. All right, so let's start off on page 85. This is your demand for the month of August. It begins, as I mentioned, on page 85, and it goes through page 90 for the month of August, which includes all of your operating and capital payments. was 19.2 million. Just as a point of reference, in July, we had 33.8 million, but recall that 14 million was included in there for your semi-annual bond payment. So pretty on par to what July was. Nothing unusual to report, so I'll stop there to see if there's any questions, anything.
Here, thank you.
Questions? No, I think we're okay at this moment. Go ahead.
Thank you. Moving on to page 91, 6AB, this is your West Basin Cash Investment Report. I know you just heard a very long and very thorough report by Chandler Asset Management, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. As you heard from them, our portfolio is strong, doing well, we're performing above benchmark. I just do want to point out that our market value at August 31st, 2022 was 68.6 million. This is just a slight decrease from the previous month, we were at 70.4 million. Again, we have a very well-diversified portfolio. I did want to point out just the transactions that happened during the month. So if I could ask you to turn to page 94. As we discussed earlier regarding the small community bank investment program, we did have two of our banks, which I mentioned, Manufacturers Bank CD, which is 250,000, matured this past month, as well as City First Bank, Broadway Federal, their CDARS program for 750,000 did mature as well. And Margaret will then be working with both these banks and hopefully get a good, reasonable rate of return, and we'll report that next month. Also just wanted to comment that we will be bringing back the new policy or recommendations to the policy for you to consider these items. Report on cash and investments, and then I'll just pause there to see if you have any questions.
Questions?
No, thank you.
Moving on to page 110, this is your monthly water sales report. This includes the month of July and August. So I'd like to start at the beginning of the very top of page 109. This is your imported retail sales, and we budgeted 103,200 acre feet for the fiscal year. For the first 2 months, we are at 18,200. This is compared to a budget of 20,500. We are below budget at about 2,300 acre feet, or 11%. As you all are aware, with all the messaging going on about conservation, we are seeing those numbers in here. Well, of course, we'll continue to monitor this and bring back each month what our sales are. Moving down to the bottom of page 109 is your imported barrier. If you recall, last year we had very high volumes because of the Hyperion spill. We weren't able to produce as much water for the West Coast barrier, recycled water, I should say. Now we are seeing that start to ramp up. So you'll see your sales for the month of August at 365 for the total injection into the barriers. And for a year to date, we're at 998 as compared to a budget of 116. So tracking just a little bit under that.
Marianne, so with these reductions in the sales, is there a kind of a dollar magnitude in terms of revenue kind of implications?
There are, and we will be bringing that back on our quarterly budget versus actual. I don't have that in front of me right now, Greg, but if you'd like me to, I can always follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to page 110, start at the top of the page is your recycled water sales. Again, recall we had budgeted 32,643 for the year. Looking down at the month of August, we did about a little over 2,300, which is above last year. But again, as I mentioned last year, we did have a few hiccups related to the Hyperion spill. This is below budget at about 800 acre feet. And also on a year to date, we are tracking a below budget as well. We're at about 4,600 acre feet in total sales year to date, compared to about 6,200 for the year to date. And I want to bring your attention to the bottom half of the page, and I want to talk to you about each of the categories that we track. So that's very and the disinfectant tertiary. I wanted to point out with the barrier this month, I understand that that we did have production ramping up. Unfortunately, we were told that the county discovered a leak in one of their wells, which then shut down production temporarily. And I understand that as of Monday, it is ramping back up. So you do see that we're under budget for the month of August. And you can see on the year-to-date as well, at the bottom of the page, we'd hoped to be about 2,000 and we're at more like 1,100. So that's with the barrier. On the refineries, I think I noted last month that we did note there was possible discrepancy from the reads that we were getting from Cal Water Service as far as the Marathon sales. Staff has talked to them and did confirm that they are having a malfunction in the meter. And so we are working with them to correct that, and hopefully we will see higher sales not on the way back, but in the future as well, once that is resolved. So although it's showing under, I'm hoping that next month's report or fall month, whatever we get this, you'll be seeing that more in line to what we budgeted. And that concludes my report on water sales and revenues. Any questions, be happy to answer.
Just wanted to answer your question, Greg, as it relates to the imported water sales. And I just looked at the imported retail. The fact that we are down about 2,300 acre feet, and if we think about what our rates are for that we would add on top of the commodity rate, it takes in about a little over, or a little under, I should say, $800,000 is what our impact is for the first 2 months.
So our revenue is short by about 800,000 relative to budget.
On just the imported retail, correct?
Okay, well, thank you for that inclusion.
I do have a question. So we have a meter that has issues with Marathon.
It's not our meter, it's Cal Water's.
Cal Water's meter? Okay. Do we know how quickly they're going to get that fixed?
I can't tell you certainly. I know that we're discussing those issues with them now.
Obviously, with it not reading right, we're not tracking.
Well, I'm told that we have the ability through Veolia to get that information. So that's what kind of alerted us that there was an issue. When we looked at those numbers and we looked at what was reported, we take our reads from our customers, and there was a discrepancy.
Oh, okay. Okay, so at the end, you all will get it resolved. And is there a way that we on the back end track on the discrepancy side to get proper billing?
Yes, so in our billing, we can put into each month what those correct billings are. So we can go back and correct the prior months. We'll show it being billed in whatever month it's billed, so we'll earn the revenue, and then we can show when that production actually did happen.
At the end, we'll be made whole. We should be made whole.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Good. Well, next time when, well, I'm sure by this committee, you can probably hopefully tell us that the meter has been repaired or what have you, but just make a note. That'd be great. Is that?
You would know.
General manager, you
Yes,
would know?
you should
Okay.
know.
Well, the general manager at the next meeting, you can inform us when that meter was fixed
We will do that.
in this report.
That's an action item.
So I'm putting in an action item for staff that general manager will institute.
We will do that. Thank you for that directive.
Thank you also for letting us know what's going on, but I want to make sure, that we get that adjusted. Okay. Any other questions? And I guess at this point, unless I missed it, Brewer DeSalter's not even on here anymore, right? You guys just took it out, right?
Yeah, no sales.
Okay.
Yeah, the brewer desalter is now demolished. And we're in the process of wrapping that up.
It's history.
History, yes.
Right. Okay. Very good. Any other questions on this part of the report? So you go on to the next part.
Yes.
I know you're looking at it like you're ready.
I'm on the home stretch.
Okay.
I don't want to keep you too long. So the last two reports are, the first one being the director's conference and travel expense. This is through the month of August. So you'll see we have to date 9,500 in spend, and with the remaining balance of about $65,000 in budget. And then over onto page 112, this is your executive management and staff travel expense report. To date, we've spent about 11,800 with the remaining balance of 88,200.
Very good. Any questions from Director Williams?
No, thank you. Good report.
indeed. Thank you. And any questions from Director Gray or Director Deere?
No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Get my papers back in order. Okay, so we will move forward. There is no closed session today.
Correct.
And we are on to director's comments and future agenda items. So with that, I'll start with Director Williams, who's the member. With Williams comments or future
No,
items?
thank you. Just a great report. Thank you very much. Great job.
Very good. Director Gray.
Thank you. Just thank you to all the staff who made presentations today and the general manager and to my fellow board members. Great discussion today. Thank you, staff and board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, Director Deere, is he with us? He's not on the call. Okay. Let's see. I think I will wrap up really quick with a couple of things. One is, it was mentioned yesterday at the Policy and Legislative Committee that a bill was passed and apparently signed by the governor regarding the future of hybrid meetings.
AB 2449.
AB 2449. Okay. And I know that you all had updated us a little along the way, but I don't remember all the details of that bill. So I actually would ask that, and I suppose it would come through this committee probably first, but can you give us an information update next month as to what that bill means to West Basin or special districts at the next meeting, if you guys can give us an update. Apparently it has quite an extension date, so we need to understand that. Let me think. The next thing is one or two things really fast. And one of them is, look, at the end of the day, I know that this was I think it was a pretty good committee meeting. You guys brought a lot of information to us, especially about the hybrid work schedule. So I definitely want to compliment you, and seeing the packet and what was in there. So for what that's worth. Look, I will make no qualms about it. I'm extremely frustrated that we've had a lot of meetings that have been canceled or pushed back. I want to apologize to staff for that. Sometimes I'm caught in the lurch just like everybody else. So I think we owe it to our staff to say I'm sorry that the meetings keep getting shuffled and shifted around, and I'm frustrated personally. I'm doing my best physically to be here when I can. I don't like doing the Zoom thing, but sometimes you all see I do. But knowing that at the end of the day, I want to physically be here for these meetings. I can only speak for myself. I really would like us to get a little more consistent with the presence of the board being here. Again, I can only speak for myself. But we've had a lot of meetings that have been canceled or rescheduled or this, that, and the other, and it's extremely confusing to, I'm sure, not just our staff, but to the outside public. So I do think that the board needs to address that amongst ourselves, but we need to be a little more back on track with schedule. So I just, I can't go on further without at least expressing that. But for what it's worth, I also think that this allowing the public to participate has been working good. So anyway, I think with that, we have everything that we've moved to the board. Our meeting is going to be on Monday, right? We're on Monday. We have a board meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
And with that, if I may,
Go ahead.
we do plan to have some special celebrations for Hispanic Heritage Month.
Okay.
And we would love to, have a photo opportunity with the full board around that. We actually have a guest speaker who will be coming in. It will be LA Department of Water and Power new board commissioner, Ms. Cynthia Ruiz.
Okay.
And so she'll be here to speak with the board in honor and celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. And I believe she'll be here in person, but I did ask her if she prefers virtual, we can make that available.
Sure.
But in any case, we'd love to have a photo opportunity with the board with the proclamation that will be presented for signature.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think that's it. Oh, Director Williams, go ahead.
Thank you. Please allow me to say a few words here. I agree with you that just bouncing around in our meetings is no good. And it's not because of staff.
No.
We know. It's not staff. It's other people who have not made West Basin a priority. Now, I'm a military man, Boy Scout guy, a civil engineer, public works director. We stick to the calendar. And my calendar is West Basin's calendar. Whatever West Basin is planning, is doing, that's my calendar. I don't change it. So and I let staff know that whatever you need from me, if West Basin needs that, West Basin's got it. When you need it, at the time that you need it. So I don't change. I try very hard not to change because I don't like meeting changes because they disrupt everything else. Because if you move a meeting, you have to move something else and then again, move something. Don't like that. I get confused. So I like it straight. I look at my calendar, I know where I'm supposed to be, and that's where West Basin needs me. That's where I'm going to be. So I would appreciate it if we would have this discussion at the board meeting.
Okay.
We talk to our board members and say, hey, West Basin has to come first. Because I don't like changing it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Director Gray. I know
Yes,
we're
go
going to have
ahead.
a full discussion, but I do have some comments.
Go
You
ahead.
know, I hear the comments about meetings being changed, and I'm not quite sure what that means because the board meeting is set for a certain time. Rarely that is changed based on administrative code. I think recently there was a request to have that change, but I don't know if that's going to happen. The committees are the only changes, they're set for a certain time, and only changes when that occurs would be if the chair of that committee requests it. And I can't recall that I've requested any committee be changed that frequently. So I'm not sure where the discussion about meetings being changed, unless they're personal meetings or whatever else. I don't know, but I don't want the public to get the impression that our meetings are being changed a lot, because I don't think that happens. And certainly staff is not involved in making a decision about a meeting being changed. So they're certainly not part of any discussion or any responsibility, except, following the request of the director or the general manager. But I don't think a lot of meetings have been changed. I know some meetings have been tried to be scheduled because of special board meetings or anything else, but our regular committee meetings and our regular board meetings are pretty much the same, except if a director requests that, who's chair of that committee. So I want the public to know that in the administrative code, they're supposed to happen during a certain time period, and they do unless there's a special request by the chair of that committee to do that. But our board meetings are set based on the administrative code, is what I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Gray. And you are accurate that the staff has not been in the ones changing meetings. It's been the availability of directors. There have been a number of committee meetings that have been canceled or moved around, including today, the E&O meeting, which would have been last week. But all that being said, and I think Director Williams is exactly right. And in my opinion too, my calendar is based on what we set in the beginning of the year with the committee structure. So as soon as you all put them on the calendar, I block it on mine. And the way these are set up is there's a chair, there's a member, and there's an alternate. And so I do the same thing. I let staff know ahead of time if I can't be available, but I don't ask them to move things on my behalf. I say, look and see who else can do the meeting. Obviously, if there's not going to be a quorum, that's a different story. So I fully concur with Director Williams that we have a process. Business can be implemented when there's the two who are committee, or there's at least three for the board meeting. And so for what it's worth, we need to try and keep our calendar consistent. And obviously in the new year, when we reset the calendar based on who's on what committee, we can look at schedules that hopefully will accommodate better. So Director Gray, that's not me pushing back at all to you. It's just, I'm just venting my frustration that the last 2 months, some meetings on committee meetings have been moved around, and I don't think they were yours. And we need to make sure that the board, we need to try and honor and respect our staff who are trying to get agendas created according to a schedule. And even for me, when something gets thrown out at the last minute, that's, that screwed up my schedule. I was focused on something I needed to do. So anyways,
I totally, Chair, I
Go ahead.
totally agree with you, Director Williams. Totally agree. You're absolutely right. I just want to say
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been a tough couple of years, and even now, we're still having challenges as we get to some sort of normalcy. And I think we owe it to the staff that the board is doing our part. So for what it's worth, I don't know if we have to have a full-on discussion about this at the board meeting. I don't think it merits that. I mean, we're not children, we're adults here, okay? But, but I will express my opinion because personally, I'm frustrated as a colleague. So, okay, with that, I think all the comments have been put out there. I want to say I do appreciate staff. I appreciate the work. And so that's why, it's upon us to make sure that we're showing up and making decisions to keep this place moving. So I see, do you have a final comment?
I would just say, I also thank, staff for being present physically here in the boardroom when information is to be provided,
Yes.
for the board to consider. And so I really appreciate, each and every one of you for doing that. I know with all the discussion of teleworking and telecommuting and all of that, I appreciate the change from presenting virtually to presenting here in person. And I think it means a lot, at least to me.
All right, thank you. And thank you for bringing that up too, because I believe the same thing. I appreciate the staff is physically here when we do presentations for these committee meetings and the board meeting, but also if we do have presenters, when they physically are here too, because it just works so much better. Even if we're sitting in this room and looking at that screen and trying to hear, and who knows if something fails along the way. So it's best, we need to get back to some sort of normal order. And so I am very much appreciative of that, Greg, that we need to look at that going forward with both the committees and the full board. All right, so with that, this committee meeting is adjourned.
All right, well, thank you, everyone.